You know what I've learned recently? This is a global show. It airs all over the world, and thank you for making it that, and thank you for joining us. I've learned that a lot of you record these shows. Brilliant. This is unlike other shows, folks. If our doctors knew about fungus, their poisons, and illness and disease and symptoms, wouldn't be necessary to record it. But if I'm gone, where are you going to get this information? Because doctors learn this much about bacteria. So if your illness ends in an itis, sinusitis, bronchitis, tonsillitis, you're going on an antibiotic. But is that the right drug? In opening today's show, I'm talking about how widespread are fungal infections. If a lot of our medications, help with fungus, for example, statin drugs happen to kill fungus. They also lower cholesterol. How widespread then are fungal diseases? I'm going to ask that question, and you fill in the blank. I think you're going to enjoy it. In the middle of today's show, Suzanne Gigliotti, registered nurse with her master's degree, is going to join us. Suzanne and I sat down a couple of months ago on this set. What does a registered nurse with a master's degree do when she's working in a hospital and gets sick, and sicker and sicker and sicker? What if you find out mold in the hospital has a lot to do with the symptoms you're suffering from? How did she find her way out? All that, and I assure you a whole lot more on this Know the Cause. Thanks for joining.
For the past 45 years, I have dedicated my life and my whole career to finding the root cause of disease. And I now know with certainty that we must play a role in our own health care. I'm a self-care advocate. You know what? Every time you change your diet for the better, exercise, or swallow a nutritional supplement, so are you. Now welcome to Know the Cause.
Friends, many years ago I was asked to give a lecture to both doctors and the lay public. There were two independent lectures. And I thought it was on fungus. Obviously, I'm Doug Kaufmann, host of Know the Cause, been on the air almost 22 years. And so I'm going to talk on fungus. So the people said, what do you want your lecture to be on? Cancer, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune disease? What do you want it to be on? And I said, okay, let me think about that. And I want to show you my opening graphic to the lay public, okay? Here it is. You fill in your own blank. Hello, comma, Linda. I'm Dr. fill in the blank. Your test results indicate that you have fill in the blank, let's say gout. There is really nothing we can do but treat gout with prescription drugs. They happen to be colchicine and allopurinol. We would recommend this because the cause of gout or cancer or diabetes is still unknown. There is no diet that helps with fill in the blank, so let's manage your symptoms with colchicine and allopurinol. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Okay, anybody with a show of hands ever walk down that aisle? There's nothing we can do. Folks, they're right. When your doctor tells you there's nothing left I can do, he or she is dead on correct, because they didn't learn in medical training about fungus. Gout happens to be a fungal disease. Did you know that brewer's yeast, the fermentation of brewer's yeast, the byproduct of brewer's yeast, right, is a mycotoxin called ethanol or alcohol? And it also makes uric acid. Brewer's yeast makes uric acid. And the doctor will tell you, well, you have a uric acid problem, lots of uric acid, crystalline formations, that's why they hurt your toes, etc., in the case of gout. Let's get just a tiny bit deep, and I think you'll better understand why our doctors don't know this. But you need to know this. This is life-saving information, and thank you for telling your friends about this show. Okay? How widespread are fungal infections if aspirin kills fungus? Tamoxifen, the breast cancer drug, kills fungus. Statin drugs are antifungal. Did you know that? Gout medications are antifungal. Chemotherapy drugs have antifungal properties. And folks, I list a few more here, but you can just go on and on. Let me show these to you. Antidepressants have antifungal properties? You mean Zoloft, Paxil? Gee, no wonder they seem to work. AIDS? Did you know diflucan was invented for AIDS by Pfizer back in the 80s? Diflucan is now the one-pill vaginal yeast cure. Dandruff medications are antifungal. Some cytotoxic drugs like cyclosporin are antifungal. Calcium channel blockers, blood pressure medications, enhance antifungal drugs. Anti-inflammatory drugs possess antifungal activity. You get my point. How widespread are fungal diseases if statins, Lipitor, kills fungus? The question you and I would have, and in medicine they don't ask this question, wait a minute, if an antifungal drug lowers my triglycerides, what must have raised it? If an antifungal kills fungus, right, lowers my cholesterol or triglyceride, why must it be up? I swallow something that kills fungus and my cholesterol goes down. Could systemic mycosis, systemic fungal infections, actually be the cause of elevated blood lipids? You've got to ask that. They're not asking that in medicine, okay? Do our doctors know about fungus? This comes out of medical mycology circa 2003, so 16, 17 years ago. The number of immunocompromised patients and subsequent invasive fungal infections continues to rise. This is 16 years ago. However, the education of future medical mycologists, those who study fungus, to engage this growing problem is diminishing. While there is an increasing number of publications and grants awarded in the study of fungus, the time and detail devoted to teaching medical mycology in the U.S. medical schools are inadequate. You getting this? Nobody wants to go into mycology. There's millions of dollars cutting the tissue out, not much in understanding why it's so badly inflamed. Oh, this is from Tom Chiller. Fungal disease is a growing nemesis. Wise words from Dr. Tom Chiller. As a healthcare provider, you can do the following to reduce morbidity, diseases, and mortality from fungal infections, okay? Listen to what this doctor says. This comes directly from the Center for Disease Control. Consider a fungal etiology in patients with presumed, every infection, in my opinion, is presumed bacterial or viral, who are not improving with treatment. Wow, wow, folks. What he's saying is what old medical books like these said a long time ago. This one's 1957. There is reason to believe that systemic fungal infections have been becoming more prevalent recently, and they will probably continue to increase in incidence. Johns Hopkins University, 1957. The medical community, folks, really smart, really good people. But the status quo of selling drugs and surgery and drugs and surgery and lab tests and drugs and surgery is working beautifully. Why should we take on understanding the cause when treating the symptoms is so profitable? Folks, where was God when that happened? I'm joined today by a nurse who has a master's degree in nursing, who became sick. And all the king's horses, all the king's men, all the prescription pads couldn't pull her out of it. Confusion abounds because she was trained as a nurse. The allopathic model says for each symptom, here's a prescription, right? But what if you work in a hospital that has a nosocomial infection? We get bacterial or fungal or viral infections, but buildings get nosocomial infections. And they're bad because of the ducting system in them. Suzanne, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to introduce you to my friends here on this network. That must have been a very miserable time in your life.
It was.
You were sick and getting sicker.
Yes.
And tell the folks some of the brain problems and physical problems you were having.
I had a lot of psychological, neurological symptoms, and I say this to you now, 2 years later, in hindsight, which is always 20/20, but the biggest problem I had was profound fatigue. Fatigue that just stopped me, that I had to stop and sleep like I was drugged. I would go to my car in my lunch half hour and sleep. The second problem I had, which was really alarming to me, was I thought I had Alzheimer's. We do like to diagnose ourselves.
Right.
Short-term memory, multitasking, can't remember things that people have told me, trying to learn new software, not grasping it, burning mouth, no sense of smell, balance is off, vision is off,
Do you
everything is
today
off.
feel that all those are mold symptoms.
I do.
Yeah, and by the way, so does a doctor who's been on this network with me, Dr. Soraya.
Yes.
It's really by the grace of God that I lectured that night. Dr. Soraya was one of 400 doctors in the audience, and he came up to me on Sunday. I was the keynote speaker. He came up to me on Sunday, patted me on the back and said, "That lecture changed my world." He had been doing bronchoscopies on people where they put the tube, well, you know it, where you put the tube in the lungs, and then you assess what's in the lungs. Now, folks, every pulmonologist just hands a patient antibiotics because they learn in medical school everything's bacteria. It's not, is it?
No.
Wow.
Not even close.
And you ended up in his office. Probably
Thankfully.
the one pulmonologist in the country that knew what to do. So did you challenge him? I mean, you're a nurse. They usually do that to doctors.
Maybe the first 10 minutes that I was in his office, I did, because he was discussing very naturopathic remedies, and his posture was not that of the typical pulmonologist that I, as a nurse of 27 years, had come to know. So it was a little off-putting initially.
He's a very humble guy, isn't he?
Very.
Yeah, he really is.
And soft-spoken.
So I need to ask you, where was God in all of this? I mean, you ended up having to leave that hospital. You found yourself thinking, what just happened to me? I've never heard the fungus word. Now it's growing in my lungs. Do you ever look due north and say, okay, what happened here?
I did. I was
Yeah.
angry. I was angry because prior to that, was in very good health, and I took a lot of pride in being very healthy. And this disease that I developed, the aspergillosis, just completely just knocked me out.
And that's a mold that can grow in your lungs. And unfortunately, doctors don't know much about it, so they couldn't help. The one doctor that could was here for her. Now, you are preaching this now. You're telling everybody about mold. Thank you for jumping on that bandwagon.
Absolutely.
As a nurse with all these credentials, I think that's wonderful. You had a particular friend who you walked into her home and said, "You have to be kidding me." Tell that story.
She was leaving for the women's yeshiva in Israel. I went to say goodbye to her because I knew I wouldn't see her till I'd go to Israel soon. And she was going through a divorce, and so she had some financial challenges. I walked in her house. I said, "We got to get out of here now." I literally went and bought her all sorts of supplements that I had been taught to take. I bought her an iPad. I emailed her links to the Doug Kaufmann diet and every viable link that applies to mycology, and she's a nurse as well. And I said to her, part of your journey when you go to Israel, beyond faith and spirituality, is going to be your own physical healing from the mold that you have been breathing in for years and years and years. And then she related all of the symptoms very much similar to mine.
Do you see
Yeah.
how this works? It never ceases to amaze me that God tapped on my shoulder and he said, "Go to this lecture and teach the doctors." One of the doctors was Dr. Soraya. Then you tapped on Dr. Soraya's shoulder and said, "I'm sick. I don't know what to do." And he was a gentle man. Then he taught you. Then you went to your friend. Do you know she's somewhere probably right now in Israel tapping someone's shoulder saying,
I'm
"Mold."
sure she is.
Will they ever get it? Where's your heart on this? Will your peers, the nurses, the doctors, and all the hospitals you've worked in, will they ever understand?
I don't know. It's a large paradigm shift. Large. But I'm up for the challenge.
Thank you for being on. And I've got to tell you, the Bible, my NIV Bible, references the words mildew, yeast, unleavened, 38 times derogatorily. The Bible doesn't say the word bacteria, doesn't say the word protozoa, doesn't say the word virus. 38 times yeast derogatorily. Don't be like the yeast of the Pharisees. Isn't that amazing? This never ceases to amaze me. Medical books don't, but the Bible does. Thanks.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
Okay, now you probably watched this show for a while. You probably purchased one of our books. You know about the Kaufmann 1 diet, yet you miss apple pie. You no longer have to. Over in the kitchen we go with Abby, and she's going to show you how to make Kaufmann 1 apple pie.
Hi, I'm Abby, and today in my kitchen I'm going to show you how to make a classic apple pie. This recipe is a little bit different. We're going to use a new pie crust, but I'm going to show you how to make it. It's going to be great, tastes fantastic. Doesn't look the best, just because it's hard to work with, but I'll show you. We'll go through it step by step. First thing we're going to do, we're going to be making the crust. We're pre-making this. We've got almond flour here, and we're just going to go through it with a fork just to get out any of the lumps. Make sure the lumps, nothing like that. And then I've got some arrowroot flour. Pour that in. And a little bit of coconut flour. Then we're gonna add just a pinch of salt. Then you're just gonna mix this all up. Now we're gonna add in some cold butter. And like with any pastry dough, cold butter is used best, and you just gotta kind of mash it in with your fork. Okay, so now what you're gonna do, you're gonna keep the flour in the bowl, and you're gonna make yourself a nice little well at the bottom. Nothing fancy, just a little well. Then I've got 2 eggs over here. I'm gonna whisk these up separately in a bowl. So they're already mixed before I put them in with the flour. Once these are nice and whisked, just gonna pour in the flour. I'm just going to slowly start to add the flour to the eggs. Pull that out. And then just get in there. Now this makes a very, very sticky dough ball. So you want to get as much dough off of your hands, pat it into a nice little ball, cover it in plastic wrap, set it in the fridge, and let that cool off while we're making the rest of our pie. Okay, now my pie crusts are in the fridge cooling off, so we're gonna go ahead and make the pie filling. I've got about 3 fairly large apples already chopped up and peeled, and I've gone ahead and squeezed the contents of 1 full lemon, so 1 full lemon's juice worth on top of the apples because I didn't want them to brown while they're sitting out. So let's go ahead and give this a quick little stir. Just make sure everything's nice and coated in that lemon juice. Now, we are going to add some monk fruit. Sprinkle that on top. That cinnamon, always nice with apples. A little bit of nutmeg, some extra spice. And this is tapioca flour. It'll help it thicken up a little bit while it's cooking inside the pie. And again, we're just gonna mix this up. Got my apples, they're nice and coated. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set this bowl off to the side, and I'm gonna go get my pie shells out of the fridge. Okay, I've got 1 of the pie doughs. So what I'm gonna do first, set that down, and I've got a bowl of extra arrowroot flour that I'm gonna use to flour my little silicone mat right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a lot. You're gonna need a lot of flour, so just have a lot on hand. Spread that out. And we're gonna take our dough. Unwrap that. There you go. All right, now got my rolling pin. Take a little bit of flour, put it on the rolling pin, and we're just gonna slowly roll it out. What you wanna do is every time you make a roll, you wanna try and move it around on the mat so it doesn't get stuck to the mat. You can see I'm kind of getting a little bit of the extra flour, not only on top but also underneath so it doesn't get stuck to the mat. And you just wanna keep rolling, see it's already sticking. So what we're gonna do, just gonna transfer it over. And I've tried many ways and there's no real easy way to get under it. But let's see if it works. Oh, there you go. All right. Now, you're just gonna take your time and you're just gonna try and smush it into what looks like a normal pie crust. I'm gonna go ahead and put the apple pie filling in. Again, we're gonna give that another mixture. Just make sure all the stuff that fell to the bottom gets nice and mixed in. And we're gonna add it in. You don't want anything to be too high because the higher it is, the faster it's gonna puff up a little bit and it's just gonna make the whole pie look a little uneven and cook unevenly. So we've got this done. Now we're gonna set this off to the side. I'm gonna go get the rest of my pie dough. Take my time. Slowly put it on top. Oh, this is the first time it's actually worked. I'm really excited. Okay. So now you can see it's starting to collapse a little bit, it's starting to break apart. So what we're just gonna do is we're just gonna smush everything around and make sure that there are no big gaps or anything like that. Now, our pie is completely covered, it's sealed. So what we gotta do is we gotta cut a couple of little vents into the top. So I'm gonna take a sharp knife. And you wanna cut your classic little pie slits. You're gonna notice that when this bake, they actually end up kind of forming back together, but that's okay. Just as long as it's got a couple of slits in there, it's good. It'll get some of the air out. You're fine. Now, before we put this in the oven, one last thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna go rinse off my hands a little bit, and I'm gonna show you how to take care of the crust so it doesn't burn. My secret weapon for this is gonna be your aluminum foil. Now what you're gonna do, take a tiny little section, and you're gonna fold it around the outside of the pie. And this little bitty edge is gonna keep the edges of the crust from burning, because those always tend to cook faster than the rest of the pie. Apple pie is ready for the oven. All right, my pie is out of the oven. I've let it cool off and I've already taken a slice out and I'm so excited to try it. It's fantastic. Even if you wanted to make something like a crumble and you just have pie filling on the bottom and just the pie shell on top, it's also good. It's so delicious. Please make this and tell me how you like it. And whatever you do, have a great day.
Didn't that look good? I am not only a host of Know the Cause, I am the chief taster also. When Abby goes into that kitchen, everything changes. So good. Folks, let me summarize today's show. How common are fungal infections, right? In a book, Breast Cancer, Hope at Last, 3 physicians with the World Health Organization in the 1990s wrote this. They believe this cancer is breast cancer, and it's 500 pages just on fungus causing breast cancer. So these guys felt that breast cancer, prostate, colon, liver, uterine, ovarian cancer, atherosclerosis, AIDS, gout, Crohn's, MS, hyperactivity, infertility, psoriasis, cirrhosis, Alzheimer's disease, man, they're right. Cirrhosis, scleroderma, Raynaud's disease, sarcoidosis, kidney stones, amyloidosis, vasculitis, arthritis. These doctors warned us 25 years ago to understand the cause. So often we throw a medication at us to interfere with some normal pathway. Diet sometimes will get you to the real cause. Don't feed fungus. Eat what fungus doesn't. God bless you, folks. I'll see you next time.